Hello, my fine, fine friends, and welcome to Drawing Colors. I'll try and remember to show you my face when I make these videos, at least for a little bit at the start and end. Remind you that I too am human, I too am suffering, and sometimes I'm happy even. What we're going to talk about today is a continuation, now is a continuation of the drawing shapes video, which is we're just going to improve our shapes by avoiding them all just being black and white, and instead we're going to make them colored or transparent, depending on what we want to do. So let's just jump into it, okay? So with drawing colors, we're going to just continue on with the code that I was writing before. This is still part of drawing experiments, right? So over in my atom here, I've just got the code that I ended drawing shapes with. And I've still got my drawing experiments project open and so forth. And actually, just because it's a good thing to remember to do, it might be a good idea to go over to GitHub Desktop over here. Notice that it's seen the changes that I made because I put my drawing experiments folder inside my Cart253 repository. It has noticed that I changed the script, right? And it's noticed that by the time I finished and saved, I had added these lines to draw that kind of this kind of cone shape with ellipses. So I'm just going to commit that. Drew a cone. Maybe I'll say drawing experiment. Drew a cone. Okay, so that's my commit message down here. Just so that I saved this point in my little journey of doing these drawing experiments. I'm going to put that message in, and I'm going to commit these changes to my repository to save that stage of my work. Commit. It's in. You can see over here in the push origin area that now there are 2 commits that need to be pushed at some point to GitHub. I will do my very best to remember to do that at the end of this video. Here's hoping that works. Okay, so now we've committed the previous changes. Let's carry on. We're free to work on this knowing that we've saved this wonderful state. So if I run this code with Atom Live Server, I see that it was running, but I've closed the window, so I'm going to go to stop, and then I'm going to start it again. That's a good way to reset things if things aren't working out for you. Always try at least stopping the server and starting it again. I'm going to start it up again, and there's my cone on its orange background. Very satisfying. We know that this is actually just a set of ellipses getting smaller. Perfect. So the thing that I want to talk about today is color, right? And let's just go to the P5 reference immediately. So p5js.org/reference, and it's got to remember how to spell. And we will see that the very first item actually in the categories is this category called color. There are quite a few things in here. There's a section called creating and reading, which has a bunch of stuff here. And then there's a section called setting. What I want to talk about today is just the setting stuff, and not even very much of the setting stuff. Again, feel absolutely free to look at some of this other stuff. I'm just focusing on introducing some of the basics so that you get the basic ideas, right? But all of these are open for use. So we've already seen one of these instructions, right, which is the background instruction. And the background instruction is for painting the entire canvas one color, okay? That's how background works. You specify a color and it paints the background of paints the canvas that color. The other 2 that I want to look at now, because they're kind of the most important, are fill. That's this one here. Fill is what we use to say what color shapes should be filled in with. Probably not super duper surprising. And the other one I want to talk about is stroke. Stroke is the one that we use to say what color the line around a shape should be. The default of that is black, as we've seen. The default of the fill option is white. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. And we've already seen really how this works. So let's pop back over to our atom. We've seen when we specified, because we've got a background command right here, that we specify 3 numbers when we're going to specify a color, right? And those 3 numbers are the red, green, and blue. Red, RGB. It is RGB, isn't it? The red, green, and blue amounts that this color should be made up of. So if we were looking at the documentation, it would look something like this, right? The red, green, and blue contents of our color. And depending on what we set those numbers to, we will end up with different colors. And This is somewhat intuitive. The most important thing to know is that, at least by default, each of these numbers can be between 0 and 255. So 255 means that you're going to use all of that color, so that's all of the red. 0 means you're not going to use any of the color, so that's none of the green and none of the blue. So this color then has all the red, none of the green, none of the blue. So what color would that be? That would be red, right? Because it's just red. If we go over to our browser and look at that over in the template project here, then we have a red background. And that is how the RGB color model works. If we want yellow, for instance, we can have all the red and all the green. Those two added together in this additive color model give you yellow, no blue. We get yellow. If we go back, if we put everything to 255, that's all of the colors all smushed together. And what that means is that it becomes white. They're all matching and they're all white. And as you probably can guess now, if we just set everything to 0, so no red, no green, no blue, in the RGB color model, that means what? It means that you have a black background, okay? And that's literally it, okay? Now, the key thing is that we've used background, and here I'm setting the background to black. Maybe I'll reset it to something a bit more pleasant, like whatever the hell that color is. Let's go quickly check. 255127 is all the red, half, right? Half of the green and none of the blue. And that looks like, oh, that's back to my orange. Perfect. Okay, so that's an orange color. The background one paints the whole canvas this color, but we can also set the fill and the stroke, right? Those were the other two that we saw. So the fill is telling it what color to make the insides of shapes. So let's just imagine another color. Let's use 1270 and what, 200. I don't know what that's going to look like. It's going to mostly be blue, right? Because it's got the biggest value under blue, and then it's got the second biggest value under red. So it's going to be some kind of mix of red and blue, which is some kind of purple, right? If I save that, then this fill color is going to be applied to all of the ellipses or all of the shapes that come after it, right? So this is the fill that I want to put in all of the shapes afterwards. So if I go back, now all of those ellipses are this rather delightful purple color. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. And then the other one that we knew we could use is stroke. I'm going to put that before fill. I don't know why. And this is to set the color of the line around things. Just to be garish and horrible, I'm going to make the line bright yellow. So stroke is the name of the function that sets the line color, and then we give it the RGB value of the color. This is the RGB values for yellow. Go back, and now my cone thing has got yellow lines around each of the coney bits, each of the circles. They're not coney bits. That's absolutely ludicrous. That's how it works, okay? Now, if you want to actually find colors not like me by randomly typing values in and hoping that you get something that looks nice, you can use a color picker. Most color pickers, if you actually look at them, will specify the RGB values that you need if you want to specify that color in a program like this. The easiest way to do that, I find, is I usually Google, I go to google.com, let's say, don't normally do it this way, and then I type in RGB color picker, click. And Google has one built in. So you can see that I could find a nice color with the slider. Let's select kind of a minty green. That's pretty good. And then if we look down here at the bottom, it's got the color specified in different color models. We're interested in RGB, so these three numbers here, 191, 255, 199. If I copy that with Command C, Control C on Windows, and I go back to Atom, I could just paste that in as, let's say, the background here. So I'm going to paste it in, instead of my orange color, I'm pasting in Google's specifications for mint in RGB, 191, 255, 199. I go back to my project over here, and now I've got that mint color as the background of my project. Lovely, that's very nice. That's almost everything you need to know. However, it's also worth noting that we don't have to just keep one set of colors for our entire program, right? So here I'm setting the stroke and fill just once, and it's applying to all of the ellipses, But I could, for instance, say that I want each ellipse to be a different color. So let's grab this fill command, and I'm going to cut it out of there, and I'm going to put it just in front of this ellipse. Okay? So this is still going to apply to all of the ellipses because it comes before them in the program, but I could choose to make each ellipse a different color if I put more fill instructions in here. So what if, for instance, I wanted these things to get darker over time? Or should we make them lighter? I'm not even sure. Let's make them lighter over time. So I'm going to add 10 to the two colors each time. So this one is going to be fill 1370-210, so that's 10 higher. This next one is going to be 1470-220. This next one is going to be 1570-230. And this next one is going to be fill 1670-240. Okay? So what I'm doing now is I've got each ellipse, just before I draw it, I set the fill color for that ellipse. You always put the fill color before the thing that you're drawing. Like you're setting the color, then you draw the shape. So this one sets the fill for this ellipse, then these two are paired together, so you set the fill and then you draw the next ellipse. Same thing for these two, same thing for these two. Okay? So we're setting the fill each time we draw an ellipse so that we get different colored ellipses. And if we go and look at what that looks like, it's subtle, but you can see how the bottommost ellipse is a deeper purple, and as it goes up towards the topmost ellipse, they're getting lighter. So you've got almost a kind of gradient effect there. Right? Not an amazing gradient, but it is actually kind of working there. Kind of appealing. I'm actually not hating that image whatsoever. Lovely. So that is how that works. You'll also notice that the stroke command that I put up here to set the line around these shapes to yellow, that's still being applied to every ellipse, right? So that's how it works. You set a color and then it will apply to everything afterwards until you choose to set it to something else, okay? And I'll talk about this and how it can be annoying a little bit later. Now, you might just as much as you want to have these colors specified, sometimes you want not to draw something, right? Like maybe you don't want to draw the line around a shape, or you don't want to draw the fill of a shape. You can look this up in the reference, of course, but there are specific instructions for this. So if I don't want shapes to have lines around them, there is a function called noStroke. And this is actually an example of a function that doesn't need any information to do its job, right? So there's nothing inside the parentheses, and that's because you don't need to say anything. All you're saying is don't draw lines around shapes. There's no extra information that it needs to know. So noStroke, written like this, N-O in lowercase, and then a big S for stroke. That's a very typical way that we write function names. We'll talk about that later as well. That's going to turn off lines around shapes for every shape that gets drawn. So none of these ellipses are going to have any line around them. So we can go and check. And now you can see the gradient effect maybe a little bit more, right? Now that there's no lines, you can see this sort of gradation from the dark purple at the back to the lighter purple at the top. Maybe it's a little prettier. It's less graphic because it's a little more indistinct, but it's kind of a nice effect nonetheless. I'm not disappointed by it. There is also similarly something called no fill, right? Like this, same idea. What might be the problem here? You might ask, well, it's not going to work. If I go back over, it looks exactly the same, right? Same purples. And the reason for that is I'm setting no fill here, which is fine. No shape after this will be drawn with any fill. But that as soon as I draw my first ellipse, I'm setting a fill, so no fill stops working. If I wanted that to apply, I would have to draw a shape immediately. The other thing that's not working here, of course, is that if I set no stroke and no fill at the same time, then you're just not going to see any shapes at all, right? If I draw a rectangle, for example, here in the middle of the screen, well, let's just draw it a big rectangle, 100, 100, 400 by 400. That would be a big rectangle, and you would definitely see it, except that no stroke and no fill are set. That means it's a rectangle with no line around it and no fill inside it, which means we see nothing. We just don't see that rectangle. It's another big philosophical conundrum, right? Does that rectangle exist? Well, it does exist in the sense that there's a line of code for drawing it, but the state of the program when it gets drawn is not to fill it or draw a line around it, so it basically can't be seen. Is it invisible or is it non-existent? I honestly don't know, but that's something to lie awake and think about. Okay, so we'll delete that stupid rectangle. The other thing that we can do is we can specify not just the sort of solid color fills, but we can specify transparency. And the way that we specify transparency is by adding one extra number to our fill or our stroke commands. Let me add, do I want to add a stroke back? I don't really. I quite like these without their stroke. So let's leave that alone. If we add a fourth number, so in this fill we're specifying red, green, and then blue, we can specify a fourth value which is often represented as A for alpha, and alpha means transparency. It's another number between 0 and 255. If we put 0, it will be completely transparent, which will make it completely invisible, because you just see right through it, like a pane of glass or something. And if we make it 255, it will be completely solid, and it will have no transparency. So let's try it out with transparency. So let's make it 100 is our alpha value, right? So now we've got 4 numbers. This bit specifies that nice purple color, and then this bit is saying that it is quite transparent. So let's go look at what this looks like now. And you can see that all of these things have got stroke around them, because I deleted no stroke, but I didn't think about that. So now the default black stroke is around them, which is actually kind of useful in this instance. You can see that that bottommost circle is now kind of a bit transparent, right? Because we can no longer actually see as much of the purple. We can see through it to the background, so it's kind of blending with that green. We could do that for all of these colors. So let's make them all 100 transparency. Oh, and now let me tell you a cool thing. So I forget, I forget on Windows, but on a Mac, if you select here, so I'm selecting because I want to type something in this fill, and then I hold down the Command key and I click after the next set of RGB values, and I click after the next set of RGB values, you can see I've got 3 cursors there. And they're all working at the same time. I think in Windows it's the Control key, so you hold down the Control key and click in multiple places. This allows me to type the same thing in 3 places at the same time, right? So I'm just typing in 3 locations. It's called multiple cursors. It's very useful. You don't have to use it, but I use it a lot in my programming. Okay, so I've added 100 transparency to all of my circles. I'm going to turn off stroke again, so I'm going to add that no stroke command to get rid of those black lines because they were ugly. So now we're drawing all of those ellipses with no outline and with transparent fills. And that's what we see. I would argue that this is less attractive, but you can see some interesting effects, right? Like as we go up, we're still getting that gradation of color. But if you look, for instance, at the topmost circle, which is just here, you can see the other edges of the circles through it. So you get quite a nice, interesting pattern that's being created at this top left edge of the circles. Maybe that's nice. Maybe that's not. Now it kind of actually looks to me more like a cone that we're looking into the bottom of or something, rather than a cone that previously I was looking down at the top of. So maybe that is cool. We could put some chips in there or something. That doesn't make much sense. That is actually all that I wanted to really say about colors. The sky's the limit now, right? We've got shapes, we've got colors. Theoretically, you could make absolutely anything, any image that you wanted to, of any dimensions. You could recreate, I don't know, a battle scene from Lord of the Rings, or a beautiful scene from Tokyo Story where the 2 elderly parents are looking out at a river, thinking about their lives. You could literally represent anything because everything's made out of pixels anyway. The truth of the matter is that it obviously takes a bit of work to draw things just out of shapes, as you can see. This is like a few lines of code just to make my little cone. But it's really, really fun to play around with. So really the next step for you is to play around now with colors and with shapes, because you've got the power. Remember to look at the reference if you want to experiment further with things. Remember there's a whole big color section. Read all of these and check it out, see what you reckon. The other thing that I swore that I would do, that I have remembered, is that I've made more changes. I'll make sure that I've saved them. Yes, I have. There's no little blue thing at the top of my script tab here, which means it's saved. And I'm going to switch across to GitHub Desktop. You can see it's noticed those changes that I made. This is quite nice too, because it's changes to the original code that I had in the last video. And you can see that it's noticed that I've changed the background color here. I've added no stroke, and I've added these fill commands in front of each of my ellipses. So again, I should describe the changes that I made. Maybe I'll say drawing experiment added color to my cone. That's sort of accurate. And I commit to master. Now that becomes part of the history of my repository. I can go and look at it now. You can see there's a few things that I've been doing now. Started drawing experiments project, drew a cone, and then added color to my cone. Wonderful. So now there are 3 commits that I want to push. I'm going to push those now. So if you actually go to my GitHub repository for Cart253 without the -2020, you will see all of this stuff. Push. Clicked on that button. It only takes a few moments because these files are very small. Wonderful. Okay, that is what I wanted to talk about today. That's drawing colors. You've been a great audience. It's a shame that you didn't ask any questions, but I guess it was really difficult because we are stuck in different times. But we will talk in person soon enough. Okay, thank you very much for listening to me, and I will see you in the next video.